The morning rush-hour train pulled into Central Station with its usual screech of brakes and hiss of doors. Steam rose from the platform as dozens of commuters hurried aboard, clutching coffee cups and checking phones. Among them was Marcus Johnson, a 28-year-old construction worker still wearing yesterday's dust on his work boots. He had just finished a grueling double shift at the downtown building site, his muscles aching and his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Marcus climbed aboard car number 4, scanning the seats for his reserved spot. He had saved for weeks to afford the premium ticket, seat 14A, window side, with extra legroom. After 16 hours of hauling steel beams and mixing concrete, he deserved this small comfort. The ticket in his pocket represented more than transportation. It was dignity, respect, a piece of equality he had earned with his sweat. But as Marcus approached row 14, his heart sank. A teenage boy in a light blue hoodie had sprawled across both seats, his expensive sneakers propped up on the armrest, his backpack claiming the window spot. The kid couldn't be older than 17, with perfectly styled hair and clothes that cost more than Marcus earned in a week. His friends surrounded him, 3 other teenagers with phones already out, filming everything like life was their personal entertainment show. The boy's name was Tyler Mitchell, though Marcus didn't know it yet. Tyler came from Riverside Heights, where houses had 3-car garages and parents hired gardeners instead of mowing lawns themselves. He had never worked a day in his life, never worried about rent money, never stood in line at a discount store counting coins. To Tyler, the world was his playground, and everyone else existed for his amusement. Marcus cleared his throat politely. "Excuse me, I think you're in my seat." He held up his ticket, the numbers clearly visible. Tyler glanced at the ticket, then at Marcus, his lips curving into a smirk that would soon become infamous across social media platforms worldwide. "Your seat." Tyler's voice dripped with mock surprise. "I don't see your name carved into it." His friend snickered, phones already recording. To them, this was content, another funny moment to share with their followers, another chance to feel superior to someone they considered beneath them. Marcus felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the same feeling he experienced whenever he walked through certain neighborhoods, shopped in upscale stores, or applied for jobs where his qualifications somehow never seemed enough. But he had paid for this seat fair and square. He had every right to sit there. "Look, I just finished a double shift. I'm exhausted. Can you please move to your assigned seat?" Marcus kept his voice steady, professional. He had learned long ago that raising his voice or showing anger would only make things worse. Society expected him to be the bigger man, always. Tyler stretched lazily, making a show of getting more comfortable. "Why don't you find another seat? Plenty of space in the back." The way he said back carried centuries of ugly history, and everyone in the car understood the reference. Some passengers looked away uncomfortably. Others pulled out their phones, though whether to help or simply watch the drama unfold remained unclear. The train lurched forward, beginning its journey toward the suburbs, where Tyler lived in his bubble of privilege. But this ride would be different from any other. This 30-minute trip would change both their lives forever, though neither young man realized it yet. The cameras were rolling, the stage was set, and the performance was about to begin. Marcus gripped his ticket tighter, his knuckles whitening. He thought about his grandmother, who had ridden buses during the civil rights era, who had faced far worse humiliation with grace and strength. He thought about his daughter, who would start kindergarten next year, and the world he wanted to leave for her. He thought about all the times he had stayed silent, swallowed his pride, walked away from confrontation. Not today. Tyler sensed something shifting in the air, some change in the dynamic that made his smirk falter for just a moment. But his friends were watching, the cameras were rolling, and his reputation was on the line. In his world, backing down meant losing face, and losing face meant losing everything that made him feel important. The other passengers watched with a mixture of curiosity, discomfort, and anticipation. Some recognized the dangerous territory this conversation was entering. Others seemed to view it as free entertainment, drama to break up their boring commute. None of them could imagine that within hours, this moment would be shared millions of times across the internet, sparking debates in classrooms, boardrooms, and living rooms around the world. The train picked up speed. carrying its passengers toward their destinations. But for Marcus and Tyler, the real journey was just beginning. One was about to learn the true cost of respect, while the other was about to discover that actions, especially recorded actions, have consequences that stretch far beyond the moment they occur. Tyler leaned back further into the seat, his confidence growing with each laugh from his audience. His friend Jake held up his phone at the perfect angle, making sure to capture both the defiant teenager and the patient man standing in the aisle. "This is going to be epic," Jake whispered to his girlfriend Sarah, who had already started a live stream on her social media account. Marcus remained standing, his work-worn hands gripping the overhead rail. The weight of exhaustion pressed down on his shoulders, but something deeper, years of accumulated frustration, began to stir within him. He had encountered Tyler's type before. Privileged kids who treated public spaces like their private property, who saw working-class people as invisible or inferior. "I'm not asking for a favor," Marcus said, his voice carrying more authority now. "I paid for that seat. The ticket clearly shows 14A. You need to move." He held up the ticket again, making sure the cameras caught it. Later, this moment would vindicate him completely, but right now it felt like throwing pearls before swine. Tyler's performance intensified. He examined his fingernails with exaggerated boredom, then looked up at Marcus with theatrical confusion. "Paid for it? With what food stamps?" The cruel comment drew gasps from several passengers and delighted laughter from his crew. Tyler basked in the attention, not realizing he was digging his own grave with every word. The train car had become a coliseum, with passengers choosing sides through their silence or their subtle reactions. An elderly woman near the front shook her head disapprovingly, but said nothing. A businessman in an expensive suit deliberately looked out the window, pretending not to notice the drama unfolding. A young mother pulled her children closer, sensing the toxic energy building in the confined space. But not everyone remained passive. Maria Santos, a nurse heading home from a night shift, had been watching the exchange with growing anger. She had seen enough cruelty in her job to recognize it in all its forms. "The man showed you his ticket," she called out from 3 rows back. "Do the right thing and move." Tyler's head snapped toward her, his eyes flashing with irritation. "Mind your own business, lady. This doesn't concern you." But Maria's intervention had shifted something in the car's atmosphere. Other passengers began to stir, to pay closer attention, to take sides in what was becoming more than just a seating dispute. Marcus felt a flicker of gratitude toward the stranger who had spoken up, but he kept his focus on Tyler. "Look, I'm not trying to cause trouble. I just want to sit in the seat I paid for. It's not complicated." His reasonable tone stood in stark contrast to Tyler's increasingly aggressive posturing. "Not complicated?" Tyler laughed harshly. "What's complicated is people like you thinking you deserve the same things as everyone else." The words hung in the air like poison gas, and suddenly the confrontation wasn't about a seat anymore. It was about dignity, equality, and the ugly reality of prejudice that many preferred to pretend no longer existed. Sarah, still live streaming, watched her viewer count climb into the hundreds, then thousands. Comments flooded in from around the world, most of them expressing shock and outrage at what they were witnessing. But she was too caught up in the moment to read them, too focused on getting the perfect angle for maximum social media impact. Marcus felt his patience finally beginning to crack. "Excuse me? People like me? What exactly do you mean by that?" His voice remained controlled, but everyone could hear the steel beneath the surface. He had given Tyler multiple opportunities to de-escalate, to show basic human decency. Those opportunities were running out. Tyler sensed he had crossed a line, but pride and peer pressure drove him forward. "You know exactly what I mean. Some people work for what they have. Others just expect handouts and special treatment." He gestured dismissively at Marcus's work clothes, his dirty boots, his calloused hands. The accusation hit Marcus like a physical blow. He thought about the 12-hour days, the weekend overtime, the money carefully budgeted to afford even small luxuries, like a train ticket with a reserved seat. He thought about his daughter's college fund, growing slowly but steadily through his labor. He thought about every assumption people made about his character based on nothing but his appearance. Special treatment? Marcus's voice rose slightly, the first crack in his composure. I work construction. 60 hours a week. I earned the money that bought this ticket through sweat and overtime. There's nothing special about it except basic respect. Tyler's friends exchanged glances, sensing the shift in energy. What had started as entertainment was becoming something more serious, more real. But Tyler couldn't back down now, not with so many people watching. His reputation, his self-image, his entire identity depended on maintaining the facade of superiority. Respect is earned, Tyler shot back, not demanded, and definitely not by people who. He paused, seeming to search for the right words, but the damage was already done. Everyone in the car understood exactly what he meant, even if he didn't finish the sentence. The train continued its journey through the city, carrying its passengers toward a destination none of them had planned to reach. In the span of 10 minutes, a simple seating dispute had evolved into something much larger, a mirror reflecting the worst aspects of society, captured in high definition and broadcast to the world. The tension in the train car had reached a breaking point. Tyler, emboldened by his friend's encouragement and the growing online audience, decided to escalate the confrontation beyond words. He shifted in the seat, deliberately spreading his legs wider and pressing his expensive sneaker against Marcus's chest. Not hard enough to be assault, but firm enough to make his message clear. "There," Tyler said with a satisfied smirk, his shoe sole making contact with Marcus's work shirt. "That's where you belong. Standing while you're better sit." The action sent shockwaves through the car. Several passengers gasped audibly, while others fumbled for their phones to capture what was clearly becoming a viral moment. Marcus looked down at the shoe pressed against his chest, his jaw clenching so tightly it was visible to every camera pointed at him. In that moment, he faced a choice that would define not just his character, but how history would remember this encounter. Every fiber of his being wanted to react with force, to teach this privileged child a lesson about respect and consequences. But Marcus was smarter than Tyler gave him credit for. Instead of reacting with violence, Marcus did something unexpected. He remained perfectly still, allowing the cameras to capture Tyler's foot against his chest, letting the world see exactly who was the aggressor in this situation. His restraint was not weakness. It was strategic brilliance that Tyler was too young and foolish to recognize. "This is what you think power looks like?" Marcus asked quietly, his voice carrying a dangerous calm. "Pressing your shoe against a working man who's done nothing wrong." His words were measured, dignified, and devastating in their simplicity. Sarah's live-stream viewer count exploded past 10,000, with comments flowing like a waterfall of outrage. "Someone call the police. This is disgusting. That poor man." But the passengers on the train seemed frozen, caught between horror and fascination at witnessing such blatant cruelty. Tyler, high on adrenaline and peer approval, pushed his luck further. "This is exactly what power looks like. You standing there taking it, because you know your place." He pressed his foot slightly harder, and Marcus's hands curled into fists at his sides. The older man's breathing deepened, his chest rising and falling under Tyler's sneaker. But then something beautiful happened. Marcus's expression shifted from anger to something resembling pity. He looked down at Tyler, really looked at him, and saw not a monster, but a lost child who had never learned the difference between strength and cruelty. "I feel sorry for you," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the silent car. "You think humiliating others makes you strong, but all it does is show everyone how weak you really are inside." The words hit Tyler like a slap, more effective than any physical retaliation could have been. The train began to slow as it approached Tyler's stop, Riverside Heights, where manicured lawns and luxury cars reflected a life of privilege that Tyler had never earned. But he couldn't bring himself to move. To get up now would mean admitting defeat, acknowledging that he had gone too far. So he remained frozen in his seat, his foot still pressed against Marcus's chest, trapped by his own pride. Dr. Elizabeth Chun, a professor of sociology, who had been quietly grading papers, finally spoke up. "Young man, you're making yourself into exactly the kind of person the world needs fewer of. Is that really who you want to be?" Her voice carried the authority of education and experience, cutting through Tyler's bravado like a knife. Tyler's friends were no longer laughing. Jake had stopped recording, suddenly realizing that they might have crossed a line that could have serious consequences. Sarah watched her comment stream with growing alarm as thousands of angry viewers demanded to know the teenagers' identities and schools. "This is going viral," she whispered urgently to Tyler. "Maybe we should." "Should what?" Tyler snapped, but his voice cracked slightly. For the first time since the confrontation began, doubt crept into his eyes. He looked around the car and saw faces filled with disgust, disappointment, and anger, all directed at him. Marcus remained standing, Tyler's shoe still against his chest, but his posture had subtly shifted. He was no longer the victim in this scenario. Through his dignity and restraint, he had become the moral victor, while Tyler's actions had transformed him into the villain of his own story. "The whole world is watching you right now," Marcus said softly, just loud enough for the cameras to pick up. "Your parents, your teachers, future employers, college admissions officers. Is this really how you want them to see you? Is this the person you want to be remembered as?" The train shuddered to a stop at Riverside Heights. The doors opened with their familiar hiss, and cool morning air flowed into the overheated car. Tyler's stop had arrived, but he remained paralyzed in his seat, his foot still pressed against Marcus's chest, trapped in a moment that was already spreading across the internet at light speed. Several passengers at Tyler's stop chose not to board, sensing the toxic atmosphere in the car. Those who did enter immediately noticed the standoff and pulled out their phones, adding to the growing documentation of Tyler's behavior. "This is your stop," Marcus said calmly. "You can get off with whatever dignity you have left, or you can stay and make this worse for yourself. The choice is yours." Tyler's hand trembled slightly as he finally lowered his foot from Marcus's chest. The weight of 1,000 stares pressed down on him as he realized that his moment of perceived triumph had become his downfall. The train doors remained open at Riverside Heights, offering him an escape route, but his legs felt frozen beneath him. "I should get off," he muttered, more to himself than anyone else. But as he tried to stand, his phone buzzed with notification after notification. Text messages from friends, missed calls from his parents, alerts from social media apps, all indicating that his 15 minutes of fame had begun, though not in the way he had intended. Sarah grabbed his arm urgently. "Tyler, look at this." She showed him her phone screen, where the live stream had accumulated over 50,000 viewers and thousands of comments, most of them calling for his identification and punishment. "People are sharing this everywhere. Someone's going to figure out who you are." But Tyler was trapped by his own ego. Standing up now, apologizing, showing any sign of backing down would mean admitting he was wrong in front of all these cameras. His teenage brain couldn't process the reality that his reputation was already destroyed. He could only focus on the immediate humiliation of surrender. Marcus watched the internal struggle playing out on Tyler's face, with a mixture of satisfaction and genuine concern. Despite everything that had happened, he saw a young person making choices that would haunt him for years to come. "Son," Marcus said quietly, "it's not too late to do the right thing." The word son hit Tyler like a lightning bolt. His own father had never shown him the kind of patient dignity that Marcus displayed, even while being humiliated. Dr. Mitchell was always too busy with his law practice, too focused on maintaining the family's social status to actually parent his children. Tyler's cruelty, Marcus realized, was learned behavior, a desperate attempt to feel powerful in a world where he actually had very little control. Dr. Chen stood up from her seat, her voice cutting through the tension. "Mr. Tyler Mitchell of 847, Oak Ridge Drive, Riverside Heights." The use of his full name and address sent a chill through the car. Tyler's face went white as he realized his anonymity was gone forever. "How do you?" Tyler started to ask, but Dr. Chen simply held up her phone, showing a social media post that had already identified him using photos from his public profiles. "The internet is very efficient at connecting dots, young man. Your face has been matched to your online presence. Your school has already been tagged in thousands of posts." The reality of his situation finally crashed over Tyler like a tsunami. His parents would see this. His teachers, his college admissions officers, future employers. Everyone would know him as the racist kid who put his foot on a black man's chest. The video would live forever on the internet, a digital scarlet letter that no amount of money or privilege could erase. Marcus moved past Tyler toward the empty seat, finally claiming what had been his all along. As he settled into 14A, he felt a complex mixture of emotions. Victory, yes, but also sadness for a young person who had destroyed his own future in pursuit of a few moments of perceived dominance. Tyler remained standing in the aisle, his world crumbling around him. His phone continued to buzz incessantly. A call from Dad flashed on the screen, but Tyler couldn't bring himself to answer it. How could he explain to his successful, image-conscious father that he had become the villain in a viral video seen by millions? "Tyler," Sarah whispered urgently, "we need to get off the train. Now." But Tyler seemed paralyzed by the magnitude of his mistake. The doors began to close, trapping him aboard for another stop, another few minutes of exposure to the cameras and condemning stares. Jake, who had been silent for several minutes, finally spoke up. "Dude, I'm sorry, but I can't be associated with this." He deleted the videos from his phone, though he knew copies existed everywhere now. "My parents will kill me if they see me in this." The betrayal by his closest friends completed Tyler's isolation. As the train pulled away from Riverside Heights, he sank into an empty seat, his head in his hands. The boy who had felt so powerful just minutes ago now looked smaller and younger than his 17 years. Marcus pulled out a book from his backpack, a biography of Frederick Douglass that he had been reading during his commute. The irony was not lost on anyone in the car. Here was a man who faced prejudice with dignity, educating himself even while others tried to diminish him. "Sir," called out Maria Santos, the nurse who had spoken up earlier, "I just want to say thank you for handling that with such grace. My children are going to hear about this, and I want them to see how a real man responds to hatred." Marcus nodded gratefully but didn't speak. He was processing his own emotions, anger at the injustice, sadness at Tyler's ignorance, but also a strange sense of hope. The world had seen everything. They had witnessed both the problem and a possible solution. Perhaps something good could come from this terrible moment. Tyler lifted his head and looked at Marcus, seeing him clearly for perhaps the first time, not as a target for his cruelty, but as a human being with feelings, dignity, and strength that Tyler could only dream of possessing. 3 months after the incident, the world had changed for both Marcus Johnson and Tyler Mitchell in ways neither could have imagined. Marcus sat in his small apartment, reading yet another interview request from a major news network. The video of his restraint and dignity in the face of Tyler's cruelty had been viewed over 100 million times, spawning countless discussions about racism, privilege, and the power of responding to hate with grace. Job offers had poured in from construction companies across the country, impressed not just by his viral fame, but by the character he had displayed under pressure. A scholarship fund had been established in his name at the local community college, where he was now pursuing a degree in social work during evening classes. His daughter would never have to worry about college tuition. But success felt bittersweet when Marcus thought about Tyler. The teenager had become the most hated person on the internet almost overnight. His college acceptance to an elite university had been rescinded. His father's law firm had lost several major clients who didn't want to be associated with the Mitchell name. The family had been forced to move from Riverside Heights after protesters gathered outside their home. Tyler himself had disappeared from public view entirely. Homeschooled now, he spent his days in therapy sessions and community service, trying to understand how his upbringing had shaped him into someone capable of such cruelty. His social media accounts remained deactivated, his friends had abandoned him, and his future remained uncertain. Marcus's phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number, but when he answered, he recognized the voice immediately. "Mr. Johnson? This is Tyler Mitchell." The voice was different now, smaller, humble, broken in ways that had nothing to do with age. "I know I have no right to call you, but I wanted to. I need to apologize." Marcus set down his coffee cup, surprised by the call, but not entirely unprepared for it. He had wondered when this moment might come. "Go ahead, Tyler. I'm listening. I've been in therapy for months, trying to understand why I did what I did. There's no excuse for it. but I think I know now where it came from. Tyler's voice cracked slightly. My whole life, I was taught that my family was better than other people because of our money, our neighborhood, our skin color. I never questioned it until I saw myself through the world's eyes. Marcus waited patiently, letting the young man find his words. I destroyed my life that day, but more importantly, I tried to destroy yours. I tried to take away your dignity, your humanity, and I failed because you're a stronger person than I could ever hope to be. Tyler paused, struggling with emotion. I can't take back what I did, but I want you to know that it changed me. I'm not the same person who got on that train. What are you doing now, Tyler? Marcus asked, his voice gentle but guarded. Community service, mostly. I work at a homeless shelter 3 days a week, and I volunteer at a community center teaching kids about the consequences of prejudice. I'm also working on my GED, since I had to leave school. Tyler's voice grew stronger. I know it doesn't undo anything, but I'm trying to become someone different. Marcus considered his words carefully. Tyler, I appreciate you calling. It takes courage to face the people you've hurt, but you need to understand that forgiveness isn't something I can just give you over the phone. It's something you'll have to earn through your actions, not just your words. I know, Tyler replied quickly. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that the person who hurt you is ashamed of who he was, and he's working every day to become someone worthy of the second chance he doesn't deserve. After they hung up, Marcus sat quietly in his apartment, processing the conversation. He thought about his grandmother, who had lived through Jim Crow and yet found ways to forgive those who had wronged her. She had always told him that hatred was a poison you drank hoping it would hurt someone else. 6 months later, Marcus received an unexpected invitation. Tyler's therapist had asked if he would be willing to participate in a restorative justice session, a face-to-face meeting designed to help both parties heal from the trauma of that day on the train. Marcus arrived at the community center nervous, but determined. Tyler looked completely different, thinner, more serious, his eyes carrying a weight that hadn't been there before. When they sat across from each other in the small conference room, Tyler began to cry before either of them spoke. I'm sorry, he whispered, the words barely audible. I'm so sorry for what I did to you, for what I took from you, for the person I was. Marcus studied the broken young man across from him and saw something he hadn't expected. Genuine remorse, real growth, authentic change. Tyler, he said slowly, I forgive you. The words seemed to lift a weight from both their shoulders. Tyler looked up, tears streaming down his face. How can you forgive someone who? Because holding on to anger would make me become someone I don't want to be. Marcus interrupted. Because you were a child who didn't know better, and now you're a young man who's learning to do better. Because everyone deserves a chance to grow. They talked for 2 hours that day, sharing their stories, their pain, their hopes for the future. When they parted, Tyler had a job offer, working with Marcus at the construction company that had hired him, learning honest work and the dignity that comes from earning your place in the world. The viral video still lived on the internet, a permanent reminder of humanity's capacity for both cruelty and grace. But now it had a sequel, a story of redemption, growth, and the power of forgiveness to transform lives. Marcus returned home that evening to find his daughter waiting for him with a school project about heroes. Daddy, she said, holding up a poster with his picture on it. My teacher says you're a hero because you showed everyone how to be strong without being mean. As he tucked her into bed that night, Marcus reflected on the strange journey that had brought them to this point. A moment of hatred had been transformed into an opportunity for healing. A viral video had become a catalyst for real change. And 2 lives that had collided in the worst possible way had found a path towards something better. The train still ran its daily route through the city, carrying new passengers with their own stories, their own struggles, their own choices between cruelty and kindness. But somewhere in the world, 2 men who had once been enemies were working side by side, building something better than what they had torn down.